Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Richard Lewis Show. We're going to be talking today about some things that have been going on in League of Legends, and my guest is a conduit through which to do that. It is the NME, I'm right in saying co-founder and co-owner, is that correct?
Yep.
Excellent. Co-founder and co-owner, known as Chachi, or Robert Stemler to the professional people like myself, or Big Robbie occasionally.
Yeah, all the time.
All the time. So let's get into it, brother. Just to paint the scene for maybe people who are coming in from other games. The reason that you're a guest on the show right now is that there's been a few things going on in League of Legends, and they've been going on silently for a while. But it's kind of blew up because the co-founder of Riot Games, Mark Merrill, a gamer named Tryndamere, has basically said a few things that are probably a little bit inappropriate and show a lack of understanding on his part, primarily about how much money flows down to organizations from League of Legends. Now, you were one of the teams that, like you say, you're relatively new in the esports space. You had a relatively successful League of Legends team in the sense that you were part of LCS.
Yeah.
So,
or at least.
Yeah. So, and you put out a very long statement that I've got in front of me, which took umbrage with
regular essay.
Yes, it was actually well written. Look, I know Reggie did the same thing, but Reggie's twit longer really reeked of team effort. You know, that all of his other friends and colleagues got together, and I know you can't possibly comment on that. I absolutely can. There's no way Reggie wrote every word of that by himself. But yours seems genuine and more real because you talked about an issue that nobody else had brought up, and that's what happens when you drop a player. But first off, I just want to get your first impressions. Being a League of Legends owner, it seemed to be like the shit, right? Because every time I bumped into these guys when they went to events, they'd swagger around like a pimp. They all had money. They all thought they were the kings of esports, despite having been in it for a relatively short space of time. So was that ever true in your experience?
I'd say there was definitely like some, at first when we got in, it was like a very surreal experience because like we had, before we were there, the same perception of the LCS that like most fans do. Like a lot of Redditors have the same perspective of how it is. Like you'll go in, the sponsors are going to be like knocking on your door in the middle of the fucking night. You want to get everything. And it just didn't work out that way. We were in there. It was certainly fun. It's fun running an LCS team, even while you're losing money, just because every time you watch your match, like on the weekend, you're like, we got here, which is like, there's relatively few people that are able to say that without having bought their way in, as opposed to like actually getting in, which we made sure to do. We couldn't have afforded to buy in straight up. But we were in the LCS, and at first it was like a very cool experience. There was the glamour, and all that eventually wore off, and it came down to like, okay, we're in the LCS, but at what point do we have to actually start winning? Like, how long can we tolerate just being around here at the bottom? And after about 4 weeks, we were like, we're not where we want to be. Coming into the LCS, we were expecting to be 5th, 4th, at least make playoffs. And we started looking at how we needed to resolve these situations and just found out that the money was not there to do it. And it became very difficult for us, and I had to just watch our games every weekend knowing how they would go, basically. And there was some degree of what I think is natural in scrim performance not translating to the stage, because in Challenger we looked really good. Like in Challenger, I would go so far as to say we had one of the most dominant performances in Challenger a team has had yet. Like most of our wins were steamrolls with the death ball comp we were doing. Most of our losses were really close. There were only 2 of them. And once we got into the LCS, the scrims during the off-season were better than our Challenger team. Like, our peak level was our scrims during the off-season, where we were fairly routinely winning against Liquid. I think was the best team we got to scrim, because you have to prove yourself before, like, TSM or CLG will scrim you. we didn't end up scrimming them ever. I don't think we've scrimmed TSM at all. We've scrimmed Cloud9. But before the season, we were looking a lot better than we ended up playing. And sometimes it just doesn't translate to the stage. And I definitely don't claim to have the experience to be an expert on resolving that particular issue. I think sometimes it's about player maturity. Sometimes it's about having a better support infrastructure around them. Sometimes it's about both. We didn't have the good support infrastructure around them because of the money, because of our mismanagement of our own expectations and things like that. So it ended up the way it did.
Let's just rewind then. Let's talk about what attracted you to League of Legends, because a lot of and this is no disrespect to you, but a lot of newer people, a lot of lesser people that that came to the party late, didn't have that esports tenure, right? They try to get into League of Legends, and I'd say by contrast, you were one of the more successful people to do that. One of the more successful entities to do that. I think about MYM, for example, in Europe, and all the disgraceful shit that went on over there. And where are they now, right? But it was very important for them to have a League of Legends team because that was the big show at the time. I think one of the reasons Mark Merrill has this attitude about League of Legends and what it does for organizations is that some of the perhaps lesser organizations have given this overinflated importance to having a League of Legends team and having an LCS spot. So my question to you would be, were you attracted to League because of that? Did you go to League because of the glitz and glamour that the LCS seemed to provide?
It was a bit more than that in our case personally. Partially, we were just fans of the game once. So I don't know how much I've covered this, but Dan and I met at Rolla, which is a university in the Midwest. It's an engineering school. We were originally going to do engineering. I was going to do aerospace. I forget what he was going to fucking do. But I was not clued into esports at all at that point. The closest I'd ever been to esports was I was like an Assassin's Creed multiplayer guy. And I was fairly close to the top tier of that game, and I would shoutcast some tournaments there and stuff like that. And I
did I get a lot of views? I didn't even know that was a thing.
Not at all. It didn't even have an esports scene. It's Ubisoft.
Yeah, true, right? We all remember Shoot Mania, right?
I met a few people through doing that shoutcasting, like Benson at MLG. These were like my first esports contacts at all. And eventually I ended up going to E3 in 2014. I got in because in 2012, Dan and I made NME Esports on a budget of $600 and had nothing but a Call of Duty team. And I bought them a headset. And then they played in a little 4-team LAN in South Carolina, and they beat Envious, who were the best team in America at the time.
Really?
Apparently. They swept them 6-0 in a best of 11 because Dan knows Call of Duty. And from that, I was able to claim that I was a member of NME Esports, this random unknown organization, and they let me into E3. I still had to pay the ticket, of course. But about 2 years after that run, in 2014 when I went, we had been considering, maybe we should do this again because we have more money now. I had gained access to, I'm like the typical trust fund kid, except just less than most of the things you hear when you associate with trust fund kid. So I'd had access to more money. We were like, we want to invest in this again. And I discovered esports at Rolla when I first saw playing on the TV in the lounge the Season 2 finals of League of Legends. The first game I saw was Game 1, where fucking Ambition got that sick quadra with a Karthus Requiem after a team fight where they all died. And the entire arena just exploded, and I was like, shit, I need to play this game. And so that was the biggest esport I had knowledge of. I started watching in, like, Season 3 when Curse was making their big run just to clutch their way into the LCS at the last second. Yeah. So I started out as a Curse fan. And then when I went to E3, I was able to meet with Steve Arnset there and get some advice from him on basically how to go about starting one up, what we need to focus on. He basically said contracts. That contracts were the most important thing. And when we went back, Dan and I just decided to do it again. And I don't quite remember. It was so long ago, I don't quite remember how we came about the Challenger team. I know we picked up a manager that we had talked to when we had $600 and could not afford a league team, named Angel, Angel Vigil. And he connected us to Otter, who was our permanent AD carry under this org. And Otter built our first roster for the expansion tournament, which was Inori, Body Drop, Wolfie, and Cat God, along with him. The expansion tournament, we were actually doing really well. And I don't know, that's going too much into like the individual history of us, but that's basically why we started in League of Legends, was because we were both fans of the game.
I mean, that sounds to me like there's nothing there to do with the numbers, the potential return of investment, the money.
Nothing to do with it.
Nothing to do with it. Well, that's interesting.
Duke was the biggest esport, but and so to that degree, it was kind of like, well, if we make an esports org, we're gonna have to have a team here eventually. But the reason we started there was that we were fans of it, because we also knew it would be more expensive than almost any other. I believe Dota 2 can sometimes, probably not anymore, but Dota 2 used to eclipse League in cost just because of the amount of travel orgs had to pay.
Yeah, absolutely.
I believe Odie made a statement to that effect somewhere recently, so it might still be like that, but I kind of doubt it. Salaries in the LCS are so high now with the VCs, I can't picture that being a thing.
So I guess I was going to bring this up a little bit later, but you guys are famous for one thing and one thing in particular, and this is going to tie in what I'm going to talk about a little bit later with the whole Mark Merrill statement. This is the 1.2 million, right? This is the 1.2 million. Now, I spent a lot of time in the company of Chris Badawi before I realized he was crazy. And he
intimidating to talk to.
I wanted to get on board with him. I still stand by what I said, dude. I think all of the other team owners did gang up on him and do a hit job on him, and I think Travis Gafford was the guy that fucking pulled the trigger. But equally, I came to realize that a lot of this player rights bullshit he was talking about was just posturing. It was just a gimmick. It was just to separate their organization from everybody else. And it was all about trying to prove that they were clever enough to get one over on Riot. That was pretty much their entire fucking modus operandi. But anyway, I talked to Badawi a lot, and he said this in an AMA, but he told it to me over beers as well. And he said the only reason that the $1.2 million amount was ever even suggested was because of him. That I think that's a nonsensical claim. Second of all, obviously the money was coming from Martin Shkreli. He's got, even now with all of his current troubles, I would imagine he's got money to burn. He doesn't think he'll be indicted or imprisoned over the court case he's currently involved in. But he was going to be the financier for that. So you turned down 1.2 million.
We did. We got into it at
That's fucking crazy, though, dog.
It is now. We assumed, this is where I talk about that sort of assumption of ours being similar to the way Reddit sees it. We just looked at it and we're like, wow, every weekend, 300,000 viewers, 200,000 viewers. That's such a branding vehicle. Why sell this when we could just like stay here, make the money from the exposure, and use it to make sure we stay here permanently? Basically, we're a top team. And what we didn't understand until we were actually in the LCS was that money wasn't there. So basically the opportunity cost that we assigned to actually taking the deal, which was losing all of that future LCS money and exposure, basically that opportunity cost was a figment of our imagination. It just wasn't there. There was no revenue to stack up against that 1.2. And if he's saying that he only made the 1.2 because he got a blank check from Martin Shkreli, I don't know if that's true or not. It didn't end up. We probably would have gotten to the bottom of it if we had pursued that option, but we didn't end up doing it. So I don't really know if it's true or not. It doesn't seem likely, though.
But this is why I want to tie it to the Mark Merrill thing, right? The fact that $1.2 million was on the table, and that went on to become kind of the ballpark for having an LCS slot that was replicated many times over. Some people have paid more, some people have paid less. I mean, you know, a lot less, like maybe a third or a quarter of that in some instances. Depends on whether that's a fire sale or not. But all of a sudden, it created this idea that an LCS slot was worth $1 million. And what I saw, change-wise, was that the owners really became cognizant of that, and they started to do bullshit like, let's get challenger teams to try and farm that secondary spot, and we can maybe sell that for $1 million to a new prospective owner. They went out and actively courted people that had venture capital and had you know, money to burn, you know, rich investors, rich sugar daddies. They went out and actively courted that and said, hey, you know, League of Legends is the place to be. Like, these are the original owners I'm talking about, by the way, the ones who now seem to have a problem with it. They were looking to get these investors and saying how great a League of Legends spot would be. And then we went, well, okay, instead of investing in your team, why don't we have our own? And then they were like, well, okay, well, we'll get challenger teams, then we'll sell one to you. And when it didn't pan out that way, they seem to be a little bit worried about the whole prospect.
That was, I'd say that's our biggest impact on the legacy of League as an organization, is that setting of the market price on an LCS spot. Although you could make the argument that would have happened with any org that had been in our spot. Maybe Shkreli would have just talked to them, so I don't know. But I have to say, I really think that number is way higher than what it's actually worth.
Oh yeah, of course. I couldn't agree more. But some people have still benefited from that artifice, you know, from that illusion, right?
Like, the only way $1 million for an LCS spot is worth it is if you literally brand like TSM, which is not possible at this point in time because they already control such a huge portion of the fan base. There is not room for a third TSM or Cloud9. So there is not room for a team that will validate that kind of price to get into the LCS. And you can get up higher. You can get to like maybe 4, 5. I could see like 400 or 500 being valid for an LCS slot if a team was able to sustain themselves there. Basically, sort of what we were doing, just on the chance that maybe one day revenue will come in. And once revenue does come in, there will be a lot of it. That's really the only reason I'd say there is to be in the LCS right now. You can get the same kind of name recognition from other games now. You used to have to be like Optic to be a big deal outside League of Legends without having a League of Legends team, or like a CSGO organization. VP, well, I don't think they're technically a CSGO organization, but VP, Envious from COD.
It doesn't matter what they are. They got $100 million from Usmanov Holdings. Like, it doesn't fucking matter. They could they could be a fucking puppet show. You know, like, you know,
they can do what they want.
Yeah, it wouldn't fucking matter right now, and I don't think it matters to Mr. Usmanov. But look, so okay, understand then, right? One of the things I wanted to convey, and I'm going to do a few videos about it, but I wanted to get you on, is understand then. Mark Merrill, right? He sits in a tower made of ivory, not from elephant tusks, but from the bones of the fallen warriors from esports. He sits up there all day. Fuck knows how much money that dude has. Crazy amounts of money. Keep in mind, he had a lot of money when they sold the company to Tencent originally. Just recently, Tencent bought out the remaining shares to have 100% control. And I imagine when Mark Merrill sold his share, he probably got a very overinflated price for it, and probably an agreement to have a job for at least 5 years in that agreement. That generally tends to be how these things work. So he knows he's untouchable at this point. And he sits in his ivory tower. Now, prior to this point, he did come down to earth and mingle with the peasants. And that can be an honorable thing, like when...
Embarrassing ways.
Well, yeah, of course, mostly, yes. When Buddha did it, for example, that helped him on his path to enlightenment. When, you know, Marie Antoinette famously refused to do it, and she said, let them eat cake, and didn't understand how anyone could starve. And Mark Merrill is definitely more Marie Antoinette than Buddha. So here's the point, right? he doesn't really fucking know what's going on, does he? He's just another fucking CEO, and he hears these stories, these huge stories. Dudes like Martin Shkreli willing to pay $1.2 million. He does think that League of Legends has made everybody rich because it had that potential 2 years ago.
I can see that view, sort of like I said in my post. I'm not so convinced that they don't know what the finances are like for LCS teams, because there's been so much material on this in the past 4 weeks.
But they never ask a team to open their books. I don't think they want to do that.
That's true.
I think they're scared of what they would find.
Yeah, they might not know.
Yeah, they might not want to know where the money comes from. And I've seen the books of League of Legends teams. I've seen the financials.
Yep.
Of several ones. Sometimes without them even knowing, because of leaks and Skype hacks and shit like that, and other times with their blessing. But the reality is, I don't think Riot would ever want to look into that. And let's be honest, I would probably be, and you might as well, wouldn't we be criticizing Riot if they said, we want to look at all your financials, we want to know how you make money? Would you be resistant to that?
It depends on what they want to use it for. I obviously wouldn't just be like, oh yeah, here you go. Well, I might, just because I've been a pretty open book about us financially on the internet thus far. But I certainly wouldn't be inclined to just instantly follow a financial disclosure demand from Riot for no apparent reason, especially in light of the fact that now that Tencent's bought the last 20%, and it's a 100% Chinese company, there's no financial disclosure coming from Riot. So I'm not interested in playing that like game of hypocrisy when it comes to open books. But it's sort of like, even if they don't open the books, even if they want to just remain ignorant to anything going on financially for an LCS team, there's only so far that they actually still have an excuse, even not knowing that, to believe that it's as profitable as they apparently do. And what I think they're conflating their own success with the success of teams in the league. And because, like, you and I may disagree a little bit on this point, I am not convinced that Riot is, like, ruthless capitalists to the point that they want to bleed the LCS dry and take as much.
Oh, God, no. I couldn't agree more with you. Here's the fucking problem with them. It's like, right, let's say, I don't know, that there's some types of incredible right-wing fascism that absolutely would lead to incredible amounts of capitalist gain, where money is the lowest common denominator, profits the all-important thing. And, you know, I believe it was Mussolini that said fascism is when the state, the government, represents the interests exclusively of corporations. That was his definition in his mind. It obviously has a very different meaning now. That's what happens through the prism of history. But regardless, right? I don't see Riot like that at all. I think they're more interested in control than profit. I think they're more interested in spreading a message than profit. I think they're a terribly inefficient company when it comes to making money. And I think this is the key issue that all the team owners are finding out right now, that when they needed to grow, they threw the money around. They threw the fucking money around. They said to streamers, hey, play our game. We'll pay you a ridiculous amount of money. They said to tournament organizers, run a tournament for us. We'll give you all the prize money. They said to organizations like Reggie and stuff, here's some fucking prize money. Stream it. TSM, build it up. And then what they said is, we're bringing it all in-house. And it wasn't about profit, because they failed to monetize all of that shit. It's actually about control and spreading their message. And their message is garbled now. It's not very... Now that Light's left... you know, he was about the anti-toxicity thing. Riot are about making the world and the internet a better place or something. I don't really fucking know what their message is anymore, but I know they're more interested in spreading whatever that message is than making a profit. And that's fucked up. That's fucked up for everyone that buys into the system wanting to make money, but it's not like the signs weren't there.
I mean, Riot wanted to, I guess, use League as like a fucking social experiment for how players act, but I mean, so. Really, I mean, Light's a PhD, so
I did hear that. I did hear that once or twice. No, but you know what? But you know what I mean. Like, I honestly think that anybody who says that Riot are greedy is missing the fucking point, actually, because they're blatantly not. here's the big problem with the league, and this has a knock-on effect to everybody. They were the #1 show in town as soon as LCS came along. I even said it. LCS was the definitive esports broadcast to watch.
The production humiliated everything but the international at the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was there every week in a regular season. They had incredible on-screen talent. Yeah, they castrated a lot of them. And yeah, they have some very strange ideas about putting people in boxes, and Monte Cristo touched on this in his video. Yeah. But at the end of the,
most of that was really.
I mean, that was the word on the circuit for a long fucking period of time. And I know from talking to people. I mean, look what they did to fucking Deficio. This guy was applying for another job, and they found out about it, and they fucked him over. So I mean, that's how hardcore it is if you're a commentator for Riot Games. But look, right? So the people they had were like incredible. Joe Miller, famously said they script everything, which some people say is a bad thing. I found out from being on television the level of rehearsal that you have to do, the level of scripting, the level of practice, trying to find that balance between keeping it spontaneous but everyone understanding you've got 2 minutes to get through this segment because we've got to do an advert, right? Really hard, and they were doing it on an esports broadcast. It's fucking awesome. Like, literally, it's fucking awesome. But what did they do with it, dude? They didn't fucking monetize it. They never went out and sold the broadcasting rights for that. In fact, they did the opposite. They went out and gave it to everyone for free. YouTube, Azubu, Twitch. Everyone allowed to broadcast it because they just wanted as many eyeballs on the product because it's a giant walking billboard for play League of Legends. Yeah, that's been their entire model, and that's why the esports teams and orgs that are bought into that now are getting fucked over because it should never have been that. People should have been made to pay either pay-per-view for LCS, like get a season pass, or they should have brought sponsors in and done a revenue share. They didn't do any of that. Like when they had Coca-Cola, for example. I mean, they fucked that up, right?
They managed to lose that sponsorship in some way. I don't know if did they lose it or did they?
So here's my understanding, right? This is from on the grapevine. They were getting millions of dollars for that Coca-Cola deal, and when they originally negotiated the deal, they promised a bunch of things. That they would encourage players to do some stuff. There'd be content around Coca-Cola. There'd be some live interactive elements. Yeah, exactly, right. Okay. And then there'd be stuff like this, right? But they didn't do any of that. And for the most part, the only reason you knew it was sponsored by Coke Zero was that it had that fucking logo in the bottom. And Coca-Cola, when it came to renegotiate the sponsorship deal, they were like, "We're Coca-Cola. Haven't you played Trivial Pursuit?" The 1986 edition, where it says the most identifiable shape on Earth is a Coca-Cola bottle. It's the most identifiable object. Haven't you? Do you realize how big we are? We don't need a fucking logo on a broadcast. Everyone knows Coca-Cola exists. Mm-hmm. We need interaction. We need an experience, and they didn't provide any of that. So they withdrew the money and the sponsorship. And then apparently what happened was Mr. Brandon Beck, I believe it is, he went to university or something or had some prior relationship with Mr. Wolf, who worked over at Coca-Cola, and they managed to hash it out and get it to a better place, and then it just quietly dissipated. So it was bungled by Riot. But I mean, whether even if a fraction of that is true, it's like you said, big non-endemics wanted to sponsor the fucking league, and they never did it. They never did it.
And that's the key. That everyone who's like got some background or understanding of like mainstream sports, a lot of people fucking tilt when you bring up mainstream sports and esports, but people who have a big understanding of that know where esports is going. Like, know that eventually it needs to, for it to reach its maximum potential, it needs to be the way mainstream sports are, with like a local team, a stadium, just sponsorships from big non-endemics like Coke you mentioned. There are some others that are like right on the frontier of esports, like kind of dipping their toe in the water, like Nike, Nissan, I think, sponsored Curse at one point.
Yeah, and they've ran a few tournaments as well where they've given away cars, that kind of thing.
And by the time all of those are like looking with like a keen eye at this space, there needs to be a better system in place for how that money gets distributed and used. than just, well, I mean, I guess you could pay us at Riot to do it. We won't give you much, but I mean, it's not going to go to the teams. And so,
yeah,
I mean, there just needs to be a better system. And I think CSGO is driving forward right now where League of Legends is regressing. And I think that's a major issue for a League fan. Like, to see that and see that Valve and Turner appear to have more of a commitment to the success of E-League and their esport in general than Riot do. Because the way I see it is that, like I mentioned earlier, Riot's not greedy. You agree with that.
No.
I think the issue is that they don't understand how serious the problem is. Like, they don't understand how soon these things will start to blow up in people's faces if they aren't resolved. Because when they created the LCS, the stipend was amazing. Like, 130K back then could cover just about everything. It probably still didn't cover everything because you can't get a house in LA and pay its rent and utilities for like 6 people for $2,500 a month. It's not possible. But the stipend back then was really good, and the fact that it hasn't raised at all, it hasn't increased, is a massive issue. And owners gave them the benefit of the doubt for a while, and now owners are like starting to get irritated that the money isn't showing up yet because they've been basically banking on the money showing up for 4 years now. And Riot has been promising that it's going to show up. Like, one day it'll be here, blah, blah, blah. And the owners are just no longer buying it. What it looks like to me as a former owner is that Riot just doesn't expect this to stop working, and the way it runs right now, they don't actually have to pay more expenses on it. Like, if they don't pay any more than what they pay right now, for the next 2 splits, it'll still run fine. Everyone will still be there. The VCs will still want to come in. The VCs will still be sold on like that dream that Riot is not coming through with. But that doesn't continue indefinitely, and Riot is behaving as though they think it will. So while they don't want it to fail, they don't seem to understand that it can. And that's where I'm worried about like the future of the title in Riot's hands, and it has to be in Riot's hands. So they need to look at the way other esports are doing things correctly and just see what they need to adapt in the way they're running the league for that to happen in their case.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was weird, actually. The CS community, there were sections of it that really got on top of E-League, and you know, we were quite clear on what we wanted to do. You know, we understood that you know, Turner, when we created this league, we knew it was going to be a big time commitment. We knew we had to fit into an existing, very overcrowded, I would even go as far as to say, schedule, and we had to work around that, and we didn't want to tread on anyone's toes or put teams in positions where they had to choose, but we also wanted everybody who turned up and contributed to get a good share of revenue. That there was going to be no real losers. You know, we didn't just want to say, oh well, look, you had a great time, we paid for your hotel, you were, you know, you came close to being on TV, there's a good lad, and give them a pat on the back, and then, you know, fuck off, right? That doesn't help anybody. You've got to spread the wealth around them. We did that with the 1.4 million, you know, that we put in every season, with 2 seasons a year, and people were critical, saying, "Oh, the winner should get more," and you know, I kind of felt like, how does that help the smaller organizations that were involved in part of it that are looking to improve? How exactly? Of course, it doesn't. How does that help complexity? You know. It's people like that, right? They deserve a fucking slice as well because they're contributing towards some great theater. You know, Jason Lake even come on the fucking desk, and we had a great funny segment. Thorin made a bet he'd wear stockings if they won a single map, and you know, and we'd made a photo. We you know, it's all this funny shit, right? Like, they made a great contribution to the broadcast, and they were a great storyline in and of themselves, and they deserve to be compensated for that. Right? The idea that it's like boom or bust, winner takes all, I fucking hate that attitude. I hate that attitude because that's not good. That's not how you grow an ecosystem. And I don't know if that's been the attitude in League of Legends, but I will say this, and like, we haven't even got to your statement yet. So sorry, this has been it's an interesting preamble, right? But I see all these owners that like when they were on top, they didn't give a fuck. They straight didn't give a fuck. When Team Liquid was getting Curse Academy, they didn't give a fuck about the rights or the wrongs, about having the money, who was on top. When TSM, number one brand in NA, they didn't give a fuck. CLG, they didn't give a fuck. Cloud9, they didn't give a fuck. Nobody gave a fuck when they were on top. Then when the venture capital guys came in, they went, oh, we don't want capitalism to dictate everything. Like, nah, bullshit, dog. You threw your fucking money and your weight around when you had the most, and now someone's come in who's got more. You're upset about it. And here's the thing. I got to be logically consistent, because I was repulsed when I remember shops, like we have a shop called Game in the UK, and they're a retail shop, and they sell computer games, and they were going, nah, Steam's killed us. We need some special dispensation because Steam gets these exclusives and no one comes in and buys physical products anymore. So it was like we had some ruling in the UK where it was like Steam couldn't fucking put stuff out before it was retail, like to try and prop them up artificially. It's like, nah, you lost.
It's not work.
Yeah, you lost. This is capitalism. Somebody did something better than you, and now you're fucked.
It's like you can't just. You're a physical store. You can't compete with the convenience of getting that from home. There is no prop up you can get from your banks, your government, that's going to resolve that massive difference. Like, oh, do I want to go get a fucking like Pokemon Sun? Oh, it's at GameStop. GameStop's 5 miles away from me. I'm like 12, so I can't drive there. Oh, but if I go on Steam, I can just get it here. Well, you can't. That was a terrible example to pick. You can't get fucking Pokemon on Steam.
All right, let's imagine that we can. Let's imagine a utopia, right, where you can get Pokemon on Steam.
You can have full screen.
No, but I'd be exactly right. So it's like, I have to be logically consistent, and therefore I apply that to League of Legends. When these guys were out in front, they were all chinking champagne glasses, and as well as a new owner, let's see if I can really pin you down here and get you to say some shit. But like, they were the guys, right? You know about the fucking group. You know about that management group. And it's like, back then, you've heard of the title, The Three Kings.
Yeah.
Right. So Reginald, Steve Arnset, and Jack Etienne were running that shit back then.
Yeah, there's no question. They were at the top of league. When I was actually at the LCS, when we attended, the first time I was there, I made sure to meet all three of them, the ones I hadn't met yet. And I was a little surprised. I'd found that Reggie and Jack were fairly dismissive, like in the kind of way you would expect. Like, yeah, you won't be here. They didn't obviously say that. But the attitude was like, well, this is a brand new owner. This is a brand new team. They're not going to be here in a split. They don't know what it's like yet. But then Steve was a bit different. Steve was like, it was like Steve had some of the experiences himself before. And like, when we played, I mentioned this game a lot, like in Reddit posts and shit. When we had our week 2 game against Liquid, I believe it was the first game of that week, we had this early game dive at like 4 minutes where we dove them under bot tower, and it was about a pixel off from going perfectly because our jungler Chachi was on Gragas. He flash-E'd in, or E-flashed, and he was like a pixel within turret range. And then he got snared in turret range by a Ryze and died. And we didn't have what it took to finish them off. We straight up lost 0 for 4. We lost that game at 4 minutes. And that was like stunning to watch as an owner. It was just like, wow, this game's over. And I passed by Steve in the hallway the following week, and he was like, don't worry about it, man. Believe me, we've seen our share of that. And it was like, yeah. Whereas Cloud9 and TSM would just kind of be like, yeah. And the attitude was just different. And that sort of, in our future business dealings with Liquid, you know the whole CSGO Kusta situation.
Right, yeah.
So I'm probably going to go more specifically into this at a later point. But at that point, there was significant dispute between us as an organization and Kusta as a player on whether he was actually a free agent or whether he was with us. And Liquid didn't really have any say in that matter. Liquid wasn't really like, they didn't get to arbitrate that for us. And so they basically just treated it as if he was a free agent. And so at that point, they offered like a little bit of a buyout, like a small portion of the buyout we had for the player, on the grounds that it was just like, well, you're clearly getting fucked over somewhat, so here you can have this. And we had said that was like not enough. And so we threatened to like dispute this with the player in court on whether the verbal contract was valid. And at that point, they upped the buyout they offered to 10,000 for Kusta, which was only an eighth of what it originally was going to be if we had disputed his verbal contract and won on that issue. It would have been 80 grand. And they agreed to pay that. They didn't make it difficult to accept it. These are things that are like, these should be industry standard basics within esports. But when I actually received our buyout payment from Liquid, I was like, my God, someone actually paid what they owed. And that was like, that hasn't been our experience in the rest of CSGO. Fucking our team manager is holding on right now to 7,500 of the team's cut from our MLG Columbus winnings in January, and continues to insist that he's paid when he clearly hasn't. There are financial records to show that he hasn't. And
yeah, well, I saw you mention this, right? And like me and Ryu or Ryu, depending on how you pronounce it, I guess how much of a fucking weeb you are. We hang out, right? We get beers, we look alike. People think we're brothers, you know. People think he's my short, better looking brother. You know, and I think he's a cool guy. I can imagine that he would retain any money that he wasn't entitled to.
Not Ryu. Glowstick, Kyle. The team.
Right. I was gonna say, right, because
Ryu is not the one who's holding.
Yeah, well, that definitely needs to be clarified, because I think I saw even a Reddit thread like Ryu keeps money. On the Global Offensive subreddit.
I don't believe Ryu ever had access to the MLG winnings. I don't think they went to him.
So Glowstick, that name rings a bell. Shit, is that Glowstick? Like no W in there?
No, Glowstik.
I don't know if I know that guy. Sam, do I know that guy? All right, good. Back to bed, Sam. So yeah, apparently, tell me about that then, because obviously that's a big chunk of change, right?
It's a big chunk of change. The biggest issue for me at first on it was that it took a long time for Kusta to get paid his cut as well. He had already moved on to Liquid at this point, and Liquid was messaging me like, yo, Kusta needs to be paid. And I was just like, I don't fucking know where his money is. I haven't had that money the entire time. And eventually he did end up getting paid. So that issue was resolved. And I haven't pursued that other 7,500 as harshly as I could, because it's not integral to the survival of our company right now. Just to put it that way. And I'm also, just because I've dealt with so many people that do not know how to transfer money in esports, it's stunning, really. But just because I've dealt with so many people, there's
so what do you mean? They don't know how to...
Actually thinks he has paid us and hasn't. And it's like...
No, but I mean, nobody can make that mistake.
I agree. It's just not a battle that I have fought yet.
Like I've gone down, okay, like check this out, right? Like I've had arguments with companies. I've been like, no, I definitely paid that gas bill, and they go, you ain't paid that gas bill, and I go, all right, and I go down to my ATM and I print out a mini statement, and I have a look. I'm like, oh fucking hell, I haven't paid that gas bill.
Yeah,
and then that's it. That's the end of that, right? It's not rocket science. It operates the exact same way in fucking business. You look at your finances, what's gone out, what's gone in. So how could he possibly make that mistake?
Oh, the way in this case, what he absolutely knows by this point, because Dan and I talked to him about it like a month ago ish in July, just before we went to Columbus again for Gears, and he was basically like, "All right, I paid you. I have the financial records of it. Let me just find them. I'll send them in a couple days." And I know that these financial records don't exist because there's a financial record of it coming in at the other end as well. And that's not there. But he just expects me to like forget about it and be like, "Oh, well, in 2 days, damn, I haven't found it. I'll keep looking." And it's like, I know you have the money. I don't know if he's spent it. And that's when it becomes a lot more of an issue, is if he no longer has it to pay what he owes us because he spent it. But he unquestionably knows that it's there. There's no records to prove that it's been sent. And so I'm unquestionably in the right on it. I just haven't pursued it much yet because I like the way things are going right now. And it's a good question, honestly. I don't have a great answer for you. It's just like,
can I theorize? Can I speculate?
Go ahead.
Well, look, I understand that every time there's a fucking public shitstorm over money between an employee and an organization, generally sympathy will always be towards the employee. They're an individual, not an entity. That's just how these stories kind of pan out. It doesn't. The rights and wrongs of it rarely even fucking matter. The actual particulars. So I think that might be a consideration. Like, if you cannot absolutely prove, for example, that you haven't received this money, and then keep in mind you've got to present the particulars to do that. Then on top of that, how does it look if big gaming esports organization NME are fucking arguing over what should be chump change? I think $7,500 is a big chunk of change, but like, I guess in business terms, if that news story was ever recorded, and I'm thinking about investing. Yeah, right. So if I'm thinking about investing in your company, right, and I see that news story on the internet, oh, they were bickering over 7,500. Well, this sounds like a fucking bust. So I think there's lots of considerations there as to why you might not want your name attached to someone like that.
It just makes sense. A big legal dispute over it, which at this point I'm gathering would be necessary to get it, because for whatever reason this person is just bent on being unethical. But like, a big legal dispute over it does not do the NME brand any favors, basically.
Of course. And never does, right?
While the NME brand, right now, the NME brand is succeeding in basically everything it does. League is like the one place we've ever had a significant failure. You can put the CSGO team up there to some degree as well, but that's not as cut and dry as just losing an LCS. That's obviously more severe. And right now, we have like Smite and Smash. And our Smite team is like number 2 in the world, barely. Like, really up there. And the prize pool in Smite is like comparable to League, which is utterly ridiculous. And we don't want to just like raise the whole fucking like evil organization like demanding, coercing their employees into doing shit. We don't want to raise that right now because everything's going perfectly fine. But at some point, if that doesn't come in, I think I have to take action on it. Because
dude, look, if what you're saying is legit, go get your fucking money, dude. Go get your fucking money, of course. That goes without saying. And like you say, some of that, I guess it all just doesn't go to the organization. You said it was prize money, right?
It's prize money.
So I'm guessing, what, did you already pay out the players out of your own pocket?
Kyle has already paid the players.
Yeah.
The manager.
So there you go. You got to go get that shit.
It's the only group that hasn't been paid. What was I going to say? I was going to say something else. Fuck. Ask me something.
Okay, good. We'll gloss over it then. Because I want to get back to your statement. We touched on it briefly, but this is the key thing. There was so much good stuff in this statement. It was, I thought, a very eye-opening view into the sort of minutiae of being a lower-level LCS owner or League of Legends team owner. I made some cliff notes here on my screen, so I'm just going to go into it. So here's the first thing. You know, Mark Merrill did say this in his original statement. He went back and edited it, but of course, it was saved for posterity. He needs to learn, I think, again.
That editing erases something.
Yeah, you're fucked. Once you say it on the internet, it's there forever. You've got archive.is screenshots. You're gonna have to deal with it. So, him editing it sort of retroactively was a bit silly, but whatever. But you said that you got the impression that he looks at lower end owners with disdain. So tell me about that.
Do you have a link to like his original?
Let me. Well, sure. Let me. Because I've got a transcript of it here, but not a link. Sam, you've got a link to that. You've got the archive of it, haven't you, Sam? Here we come. Mark Merrill's original statement.
Okay. 1 sec.
In fact, give me 2 seconds. I'm just going to grab another drink. I don't even care if you leave this in the video, Sam.
I'm going to read this.
Yeah, hook him up with that link. Let him read through it. We can chat this out in a bit. So the question was, and I'm sure Sam will edit this brilliantly together. You are going to edit this, Sam.
I'm going to have to. It's too long.
Yeah. Was about the disdain and the impression that you got that he, did treat you with disdain. So talk me through that. Why do you feel that way?
Yep. So he posted in the chat. He posted a screenshot of the unedited post. So the part I talk about, when I mention the disdain, I'm not talking about like Riot specifically having treated me with disdain while I was in the LCS. I'm talking about like the tone of this post in particular. He has this part where he's like, we've done a lot historically to help support the bottom end of the ecosystem, to help minimize the scenarios where bad teams and owners can exploit players, and we look forward to continuing to do more to help at the other ends of the spectrum too, such as for stars. Mm-hmm. Now, when I read that, it could just be like insecurity or paranoia, but I have the impression that he is referring to bad teams and owners as basically the population of the bottom end of the LCS. Mm-hmm. Like that good teams and owners don't end up there. And if you're at the bottom of the LCS, you must be exploiting your players because you're not paying like the top end of the LCS. I addressed it a little bit in the end of my post, the section after all the enemy shit, where I talk about like the actual implications of this post in particular, is that he's basically making the claim in this post that bad teams and owners are all you find at the bottom of the LCS, and that people down there are exploiting the players, which was why I brought up the whole balance of power thing. When he mentions the balance of power between players and owners, he's clearly talking about owners having too much power over players.
I got to say, in my experience, I would be inclined to agree with that.
In your experience, you'd be inclined to agree that owners have too much power over players?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think there are a few extreme examples where I agree with that, such as like fucking Winterfox owning Pobelter's image rights for life is fucking ridiculous.
Well, I think that just needs to be contested. I don't think that would ever stand up.
It never would. I'm
especially not in California, where they're super sympathetic towards stuff like this.
But
I'll even help I'll help Pobel if he wants. If he somehow watches this VOD, which he won't, 'cause it won't be on the League of Legends subreddit, but maybe he'll hear about it through the grapevine. I'll put him in. I'll put him in connection with a fucking lawyer who specializes in this area, who will just rip Winterfox to shreds. And I'll tell you firsthand, I don't think Brian Caudry wants to fucking go to court to try and uphold his right to.
I don't know what he's even going to do with them.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing.
It's not Faker. It's not Faker's image rights.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, the notorious POB definitely has a fan base, but the point is, it's like you say, look, Winterfox as an organization has struggled ever since its inception. And that's, Brian has said to me, we've talked about this. We talked about him with the CS team. He's like, this is fucking hard. I need help. I'm like, listen, dog, go get it. Go get some fucking people. Take a backward step. You can't be an owner, a manager, and everything else. And I don't think he has a plan to do anything with these image rights. I think they just sit on a shelf. So
I don't think he will. I just think it's a ridiculous contract to even construct to give to a player. Like,
but the Riot, the standard LCS contract has this shit in it.
Is that for life though, or is it just during
let me have a look at this LCS. You're right. I want to know if it is for life or whether it's just the duration of you playing in LCS.
Like if Riot owns Bjergsen's image rights, that's nonsense.
I mean, here's the thing. Again, I can't imagine Riot would ever enforce it because they don't like negative publicity. But let's have a look at. I've got the old contract in front of me. So there was a clause in the contract that says Riot can. Let me just hang on. I've got the actual clause in front of me. Use of my name and likeness, unless prohibited by law, I hereby grant to the League and the other Riot parties unlimited permission to use, alter, edit, or modify my name, tag, nickname, initials, likeness, image, picture, photograph, animation, persona, autograph, signature, voice statistics, biographical information, and or any and all other personal indicia, identifying characteristics or information supplied by me. Collectively, these are called the team member materials, each in whole or in part in any and all present and future media worldwide, in perpetuity and in connection with the season. So it
in
sounds
perpetuity. Okay,
in
that's
perpetuity. So
the same fucking thing as Twitter Fox. That's absolutely insane.
So that is a LCS contract.
Well,
In perpetuity. Right there.
I'm going to still say putting that in a contract is fucking stupid. It's
apparently it's standard actually in any sports thing. Like I remember that article. It's been a long time since I look back at that, but it was a long time ago. And I remember talking to several lawyers at the point, not just the lawyer that disseminated that contract. And they said you would find this quite commonly in sports, actually. And what it means is that, if let's say, for example, I'm Michael Jordan and I'm an amazing player and the NBA wants to continually promote what I do. And then let's say, like he did, I retire and then I go play baseball. I don't lose the NBA doesn't want to lose the rights to still be able to use him in highlight reels and everything, even though he's involved in another sport, And that was the example that was given to me. So I on the one hand, I understand why it's there, but it's the same thing. And here's the other question.
I feel like
Winter Fox were in LCS and he signed that agreement with Winter Fox and also signs it with Riot, then who wins that battle, right?
Riot.
Well, yeah, but I mean, how can two people have complete ownership of your image, rights, likeness, voice? How does that work?
Theory of the notorious Poe.
Yeah, so there you go. But I agree with you, and I understand that's a very egregious example. But perhaps again, people don't realize in most standard esports contracts, players sign away image rights.
I think it has to be at least stated that it's a little bit different in mainstream sports. In my point of view, and part of the reason is that there's a longer path to pro in mainstream sports. In mainstream sports, you've invested a whole lot more in a player to take him from like high school level to your major league team than Riot, who can basically be like, they can look at not Riot, but an org. They can look at solo queue, be like, you're doing pretty well. I'd like to hire you as a sub. Just sign here, I get your image forever. It's like, it's a different conversation for me in that case. Additionally, I kind of understand the need for teams to be able to continue marketing based on their legends, even if those legends move on to other teams. Like, being a St. Louisan in Missouri, I'm somewhat of a baseball fan.
Right.
Because we've been historically good at baseball for a long time. And we had a player named Albert Pujols. Came up in 2000, broke record after record after record for like 10 years consistently, and then left to the Los Angeles Angels. And the notion that the Cardinals would just then need to abandon talking about showing any of the historic moments of his time there in the past 10 years would be highly damaging. I don't think esports has the kind of legacy to justify that yet. There are times,
I agree.
There are certain major events, like in league history, like extremely famous plays like the expect a backdoor, like my god, that Riot always needs to have the ability to show. In my opinion, I think they
and I agree with that. But here's the thing, okay? So for me, it's not just about tenure and history. It's got to be about the player's ability, having contributed to that moment, to be able to also get a share and monetize that, right?
Absolutely.
And I don't think a lot of them get to do it. They're certainly not compensated enough for complete, ongoing, permanent image rights. That means, I don't know, let's say Brian Caudry one day in the future, fuck it, like Riot Games, I don't want to pick on Brian any more than I have to. But, let's just say Riot Games is a company, it doesn't even produce League of Legends anymore. They shut all the servers down. It's over. And then one day they get fucking bored and they decide out the fucking blue. Do you know what'd be funny? Let's just make a bunch of action figures of famous guys like Double Lift and people like this, right? And it's like the game doesn't even exist anymore. They're all playing other games. Double Lift could be like some Dota fucking champ or a CS champ. I know he'd prefer to be a Counter-Strike champ. He fancies himself as good at Counter-Strike. And he'd be out there like going, hi guys, hi everyone. I'm playing this new game. It's amazing. Meanwhile, fucking Riot are producing a Double Lift action figure that's got nothing to do with that, and he doesn't even get a slice of that pie. That's the ridiculous situation you can find yourself in with these image rights. It's one of the things that an esports athlete should never give away for nothing. Your salary should be so unbelievably high if you sign off on those, because there's ways you can monetize it. And you know what? I saw a bunch of examples like this, dude. I won't name the org, but there were some players recently, they wanted to make their own T-shirt. They had characterized a phrase, let's say, a phrase that was very unique to them. And it was and it wasn't just a phrase, it was actually a style of play that they had. So I'm being deliberately vague here. But the bottom line was, they had a phrase and a style of play associated with them. And the organization said, well, we've got your image rights, so we're going to make a T-shirt based around that phrase and that style of play, and we're going to sell it, and we'll give you 20% or something, but we keep 80%. And it was something the player had cultivated, was unique and endemic to his play style, was a phrase that he himself had coined, and he was only going to get 20% of any T-shirt sales. Meanwhile, the organization makes the T-shirt without even consulting him. And of course, that player isn't with that organization anymore. How fucking appalling is that? And this is what I mean. This is what you got to understand when I talk about organizations having too much power. These are the examples that come to my mind, dude.
So, in that case, allow me to respond to that with sort of what I mean when I claim that owners don't have too much power. I put some of it in the post. When it came to LCS, we were brand new. I'm sure the kind of exploitation that happened probably wouldn't have happened with more experienced owners. But basically, we had a 1 month off season, and the players knew that it was effectively not an option to replace them. One player in particular brought in an outside negotiator who was able to get him a salary on our team. So keep in mind, when we were playing, there were still players in the league being paid the minimum, $2,500. And
the minimum covered by the stipend, of course, right?
Yeah, the minimum covered by the stipend. We basically had a negotiation with someone, a third party outside the organization, and not this player, who would not accept less than $5,200 a month for one of our players on this team that had not proven itself at all. And I can't really mention other things without addressing which player.
Yeah, no, I get it. So here's my immediate response to that. That's how it works in every other sport, though, dude. I've got a unique skill set. You're in a unique position. You need to recruit a player with this skill set. You're going to have to pay through the fucking nose. And you look at how sports agents...
It's more than that. Because there are rules around the offseason about how much we can actually change on the roster. There are restrictions that we have to follow. And so basically leveraging those restrictions, which the outside negotiator knew how to do.
Sounds like you make an incredible agent.
Yeah, absolutely. This person leveraged the restrictions of the league to force us to pay a salary that was unreasonable, based on the value that player in question was generating. And we could not simply take a different option. We were also, there was straight up naivety from us on the issue, because we also bought into this outside negotiator's claims of how much sponsorship revenue we would be able to pull in per month. And we weren't able to get that. As I mentioned, this person claimed to us that we should reasonably be expecting to make $10,000 a month in sponsorship as an LCS team. And, you know, when we were outside the league, we weren't in the LCS, we're just a Redditor. It's like, well, fucking of course we can make that. Why wouldn't we be able to? Like, we're broadcasting to 200,000 people. We expected it would be the case. The number that ended up coming was 0. During the summer, we had $3,000 a month of sponsorship, and that was for our Challenger CSGO team. That was not for the league team. Yeah. And this is just like, we should not have bought in to the belief that we would be making that much and enough to cover that 5,200. But
so again, why? Tell me why you did. Because you know I'm an unsympathetic dude, right? Like,
oh yeah,
you know that, right? When it comes to ignorance, I should say. Like, if you've got some terrible fucking affliction, it's not your fault. You know, 6 hairy tits growing on your back, that's just a curse of nature. You know, that's unfortunate. Like, I'll be sympathetic about that. But if you don't understand the fucking marketplace, as a believer in capitalism, you know, I gotta say, if you don't understand the marketplace and someone tells you, hey, you're going to be earning $10,000, and you go, oh, well, I guess we're going to earn $10,000, I'm not inclined to be sympathetic.
Well, the thing is that we've seen, like, even from outside the scene, all you can see outside looking in, you can see those teams. You can see TSM. You can see Cloud9. You know they're making money. You know their brand is big, but you don't assume having a smaller brand when you're playing on stage against them would drop it all the way to 0. Like, this goes sort of with the way Riot monetizes or doesn't monetize it as well. Like, you wouldn't look at the LCS with that kind of numbers and be like, yeah, Riot's losing money. It's like, just because they're paying that much production value, I could imagine Turner League losing money. I don't know if that's actually the case, but I could certainly imagine it, because Turner League is fulfilling an important function in eliminating Riot's monopoly on production value in esports, and basically making sure they have to keep up with other esports in more than just looking good. Like, they have to actually have proper systems in place. But it sort of goes to that, like, you look at Riot, that's been doing what E-League is doing now for like 5 years. And why would you look at that from the outside and just assume they're losing money? It's a different question.
Yeah, but they've publicly said it. They've publicly said it multiple times. They've said this is a loss leader. All evidence points to it being a loss leader. That they don't monetize their viewing rights. That they want as many eyeballs on it for free. Because here's where they do monetize: in more and more people playing the game, and more people buying skins.
Yes, but it's that we know they don't monetize and know that they should. So it's like,
right.
When it comes to Riot, they don't make money because they choose to. They choose not to. When it comes to actual organizations, they don't make money because they can't. But, like, when you're going in there, you see Riot and you're just like, oh, well, we just won't be Riot. We'll just make sure we monetize our exposure properly. We'll just make sure we get the sponsors. It's not like there was mistakes with sponsors made in our particular case. We knew we weren't good at that. I'm fucking 23. I turned 23 2 weeks ago. I'm like a kid. We knew that we needed to hire someone who actually understands how to do those negotiations, and we did. We hired the same people that Cloud9 and TSM have apparently used. Or maybe it was Cloud9 and Liquid. I don't remember. But they came back to us like a week later with just like, this is summer. You guys are a brand new team. You're probably going to get relegated, or at least the risk is very high. We don't have like much for you. We can maybe be pushing like $500 a month.
Can I make an observation there?
Yeah.
So first thing, you know, I'm not saying they would do this, but I can understand why a marketing company that has several companies in the same space under their wing, right? And some of them are really big, like TSM Cloud9, and then you're in the same space and you're not so big. I don't know if I go and bat for you quite as hard as everybody. Yeah, you understand?
Yeah, absolutely. But these people are paid on commission. And
I totally get that. But here's the thing, like, right. Also, as a former marketing and sales guy myself, do I go and climb upwards for NME? Do I climb that mountain, right? Like, and sweat and wreck myself? You know, let's say I get a fucking sponsor who comes in and they say, we'd like to sponsor a League of Legends team, please, or we'd like to get into esports, please. And they're vague about it. And then they're not the biggest. They got a little bit of money to spend, you know? But, like, what do? Do I climb the mountain and convince them to sponsor NME? Or do I just say, I got TSM over here. They're, like, the biggest. Yeah? Okay, cool. And that just gets done in 5 minutes. I get my commission either way.
Perhaps you don't climb the mountain, but I don't see how that really helps the point of low-level owners having a lot of power.
No, you're right. But this isn't power. This is money. I think you can still lord it over your players. And again, we're going to really pontificate on this point. But here's the thing, right? So I think actually the more you distance yourself from the bigger orgs, the better it is for you because you become a diverse, a different entity. One of the things I've noticed is a lot of people tell me this stuff and they go, oh, you know, I talked to Team Liquid and they gave me all this advice and I used the same company as Team Liquid and I used the same company as TSM and Cloud9 did all this. Those guys are going to deliberately keep you weak where possible, unfortunately, whether they want to fucking say otherwise or not. It's just business. It's just fucking business. Why would I want to help an up-and-coming organization? Hey, let's say you've got a cooler name. Like, no disrespect. Again, I'll use Team Liquid as an example. Deliberately so, I suppose, because I think they're an incredibly ran organization. I think they're incredible at what they do. I think they're very ethical when it comes to things like money and everything else. But they're not ethical when it comes to their interactions with journalists. So fuck them. So let's do this, right? So Team Liquid are going to be my go-to example here. So let's just say, you know, Team Liquid are like, their logo's retarded. It's right. It's the white horse from the Lord of the Rings. Liquid. You see the water. Their owner was called Nazgul. He was a big Lord of the Rings fan. So that's retarded. What's a white horse going to do with liquid? Why isn't it a drop of water, or is more appropriately a fucking teardrop from all the crying they do on social media? Why isn't it that? Well, it isn't. Okay. No, come on. This is the show. This is the fucking show.
Yeah.
Right. So their branding is shit to me. Like, I don't understand it. You know, again, I've worked in this area. I don't think it's a strong brand, like, in that sense, like just with a logo and name perspective.
I like their jackets. I don't like their logo.
No, they got wicked jackets. No doubt about that. But I look at NME, you know, like, okay, we've got a magazine called NME in the UK, the New Musical Express. I think it's still going. But NME, the idea of beating your enemy, you can abbreviate it to NME. You got the black, the red, you know, wonderful colors, you know, danger. It's edgy, right? I could probably do something with that as a fucking market. I could probably find brands that would want to go with the black and red NME over the fucking white horse made of water. What the fuck's going on, right? I could probably find those people. But what a lot of people do is they assume when they come into the scene that all of the old elder statesmen of the scene want to help you. Well, they don't. Here's what they want to do. They want to give you that false benevolence. They want you to go out and publicly say, hey, these guys did me all these favors, but they also want to keep you weak and keep you small because you're a potential threat to their business. That's just common sense, right?
Yeah, I can agree to some degree, but I also don't think that, like, what we did receive in the very few places we did receive it was horse shit. Because most of it was common sense stuff, but stuff that I didn't focus on enough at the time. Like, have good contracts. Oh, big fucking, like, oh my god, this changes everything. But at the time, it was like, what do I focus on? Do I focus on contracts? Do I focus on content? Do I focus on roster building? Do I focus on player development? And I like sort of initially held that belief that maybe it was like fake advice, a red herring. But then when it came down to it, and contracts were actually where we had our major issue in CSGO. It was like, I know that's true. at this point, just from personal experience.
Yeah, the way it all panned out. Yeah.
I could accept the notion that they would potentially. What I would say is it's more likely that they just don't give you the good tips. They won't tell you things that are lies, but they won't give you like the magic formula to succeeding. And I think that's absolutely true.
Yeah, but not only that though. I've seen this before, right? Like I've seen the monopoly. I've seen the monopoly in esports, right? I saw it with look, Alex Garfield just left Twitch, right? You know, he was in he was Evil Geniuses, and then he built up GGA, and Alliance is their European branch, and it was all shh, don't talk about it, like, but we're all coming from the same thing. And then Riot got wind of it, and they changed it, and then Twitch came in. Because Alex Garfield was friends with someone in Twitch, Twitch came in and bought the company for like way more than it was worth. It wasn't even a talent agency. I wrote about this like multiple times, and they go in and they get bought. And it's like almost like crony capitalism for esports, right? And now Alex Garfield's been forced. Yeah, right. And then Alex Garfield gets pushed out, and everyone goes, "It's a shame. What's happened there?" Right? Well, let's analyze this. When there was teams looking to come in and sponsor other teams in the North American space, basically what would happen was if Alex Garfield deemed them to be big enough, if Evil Geniuses deemed them to be big enough, if they were on their radar, they just go in and go, "You don't want to sponsor them. They're nothing. Look at our reach. Here's our deck. Look at our," and they just go, "Yoink, fuck you," and they'd have it for themselves. Yeah. And I know firsthand, again, this is why I can't sympathize with these people in the same way. It's like, Alex Garfield probably helped a bunch of smaller organizations in his time, but when it came down to it, when it came down to his bottom line, if he wanted something, he leveraged how big that
Yes.
Exactly. Always them first. Always them first. And that's why you've got to think about this, These smaller organizations having a relationship with these bigger organizations, looking up and saying, "What have I got to do to be like you guys?" They're going to go, "Oh, well, look, we'll put you in touch with this company, this company, this company." You're right. They're never going to give you the fucking keys to the city, dude. Never.
I agree. I forget how this...
Yeah, I know. We're both drinking, which is great. But I'm good at this. I'm good at drunken conversation. That's like my brain. So we're talking about organizations having more power, right, over players, and we've gone all around about the fucking houses to get to this point. But I'm still waiting for the definitive example, and you were going to start talking about this, how players have fucked you over and you felt powerless.
Oh, no, players haven't fucked me over. No. I'm saying I don't believe I have some massive control over players' lives like that. I don't believe I did.
Did you have a team house?
I did have a team house. Yes.
So you had a team house. Did you pay them? Right. Okay. Did you pay them a salary?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So you control their money and you control where they live, correct?
Yeah. But so does Riot.
Okay, fine. But let's remove Riot from the equation. We can fuck Mark. We can cornhole Mark Merrill in 5 minutes, brother.
It's pretty hard to remove Riot from the equation.
No, I agree. Look, if it's true that they insist, and I know they do, that you've got to have houses, because you've got to be close to the studio, because they don't want to risk that the broadcast might get delayed.
It's one of those things where it's like, oh, no, you don't have to have a house near the studio. You can live in, like, fucking Oregon, where it's really cheap. Have fun, like, buying flights to Los Angeles every weekend. Paying for a hotel every weekend.
Hang on. So wait. So wait. Riot don't insist you have to live in LA?
I didn't have the conversation with them because I was just planning for us to live in LA anyway. I believe other teams have lived well outside LA before. I think.
Okay. That's interesting.
I believe it was Cloud9 lived once, like 4 to 5 hours outside LA. One split, I think they tried it, maybe 2, a full season. I could be wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure I remember one of the major old boy club orgs living outside Los Angeles.
Sounds good, right? So I mean, that's another thing right there. So Riot aren't insisting on that. And look, I fucking hate team houses. I think they're a fucking cancer. I think they're the plague of every professional player's life.
If I could find a better way to do it, I'd love to. Yeah.
Well, no. This is the thing. It's not a better way to do it. You definitely can think of a better way to do it. There isn't a more cost-efficient way to do it.
That's what I mean.
Yes. And that's team owner thinking. And look, I respect that. I understand it. but I'm more sympathetic to players. Which you know, it sucks when you're an owner and I'm talking about this stuff because you're like, Richard, I can't have a training facility and 5 separate apartments come out of my pocket. I understand that, but I think in like 5 years, I think we'll look back on the Team House era as a dark time in esports. Honestly,
I don't think we will. I just think it'll move on to the new esport du jour all the time.
I like that. I like that du jour. Brilliant. It's so classy. So look, listen, right. So let me get this straight, right? In fact, let me use another one of my wonderful analogies. My name is Richard Lewis. I work for a corporation. It can be any corporation, but let's just say, because I'll use the one I do work for. Let's use the Turner Corporation. They're great. I love them. They're super ethical and awesome, and they've treated me incredibly well. But they own the house I live in, and they give it to me completely free of charge. And they also, on top of that, pay my salary. And on top of that, they control my healthcare benefits. And on top of that, they do X, Y, and Z and all this other stuff. And I literally have to do whatever they tell me. If I refuse to do what they tell me at any given point, they just kick me out that day. No notice required because I'm not a tenant. I'm not protected by tenancy law. Out I go onto the streets, and that's it. Now, that to me is perhaps the greatest degree of control you can exert over an individual. Now, imagine I'm not a 35-year-old man with a life experience, right, and a huge liver, right? Let's imagine I'm a child. Let's imagine, I mean, I consider people under 21 to be children. They're infantilized. It's not their fault. You know, but a 19-year-old League of Legends pro, 19 years old, barely out of my parents' house, you know, deferred university and college to come and do this shit. And a team owner says to me, you got to play 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. And if you don't, you're out the team. And if you're out the team, we're not obliged to house you, care for you, look after you in any way, shape, or form. I cannot accept the argument, my fine friend, and I respect you and I like you, but I cannot accept the argument that players have the control in this arrangement. Absolutely not.
I take your points. I will rephrase your analogy.
Okay.
My name's Richard Lewis.
I like it.
I work for Turner Corporation. They're a great corporation. They've treated me well. There's no Turner employee in the next room with a gun. They've been perfect. They've been fantastic, except they own the house I live in,
right?
And they can mandate that I work 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. And if I don't work 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, or if I do that work in a way they don't approve of, they can kick me out. And then a massive third-party government regulatory agency will come in, complain about what they did, perhaps pursue legal action over what they did, institute like rules that kick them or bar them from committing or not committing.
That does sound severe, doesn't it?
I was about to say committing commerce, and I was like, is that the most socialist way to say this?
Thing. Yeah.
They can bar me from engaging in the business entirely.
Okay.
They can destroy my business's perspective publicly. And they also have like extreme control over the player in question. This is why I don't buy the thought that you can just remove Riot from the equation. I don't believe it works like that.
Okay, so let me try this then. Do you consider a 12-hour day, 7-day a week training regime acceptable?
Absolutely not.
Right, okay. So we've just had Reginald, the #1 owner, apparently, say this. That's what his players do. And the way he made it sound was not that they volunteer to do this, that they wake up at 10 a.m. and they're ready to go at 10 a.m. They start with 2 hours of VOD review and they go into scrims. And this is a structured environment. And I'm going to do a video about this because it's absolute bullshit. There's no science that backs this up. There's some absolute piece of shit author that wrote a book called Outliers. Name escapes me, but basically they peddled this myth that if you put 10,000 hours into anything, you'll be an expert at it, and that myth is somehow that's the sole amount of research we've ever done in esports, apparently.
Expert also seems like a really arbitrary line to draw.
So it's fucking horseshit, dude. And Riot obviously must be cognizant of that. I've never seen Riot lay down any hours and say, you know what, if you're working your players more than 6 hours a day, this is fucked up and unacceptable. And I think they should. I think there should be a player's charter about what conditions you should be willing to fucking live in.
I don't think that should be Riot to do. I believe that should be a players' union.
Okay, well, there's never going to be. There's never going to be a players' union because Riot have intimated they would never acknowledge a players' union. They'll acknowledge an owners' union.
But we're talking about our ideal world right now.
Okay, well,
I'd like a players' union.
Yeah, well, I'd love a fucking players' union. I'd love a players' union with authority. But you know who keeps the players down? Owners. Because it's not in their interest, is it? You find me one example in esports where the owners haven't fucking basically said. They all say we'd love a players' union. We'd love it. Yet here you are, my friend, complaining about a player exerting leverage over you to get a better salary for himself. That's part and parcel of what a players' union would do. It's welcome to the fucking jungle. Better conditions, more money, and owners have to suck it the fuck up and like it.
It's not the idea of a player exerting leverage on its owner. It's the idea that leverage is coming from a third party's rules.
Yeah, but the head of the union, a union representative, an agent, they would all be third parties. The player themselves would never do it, right?
A third party that has like literal competitive and employment power over me themselves. Like the players' union can negotiate. They can absolutely put forth standards that need to be followed. They can organize player strikes. They can organize basically class actions if it gets that fucking bad. Yeah. They can pull that. What they cannot do is be like, you know what? I don't like the way you've been treating Tom today. You're banned from our league permanently. It's like there's an exerting influence using rules put in place by a third party that I am basically forced to follow. That's being described like when I talk about things like forcing the players to live in a house that you're providing as an example of owners having too much control over the players. Like, oh, I can force this player to live in the house. I can force this player to practice on this schedule. I can force this player to eat right now if I want to. But Riot is the one forcing me to have that house. Like, as I mentioned earlier, I want someone else.
But you also said that they don't force you in writing.
What?
You don't have to have a house. It's not mandated by Riot that you have to have a team house.
I think it is mandated that you have to have a team house. I don't think it has to be in Los Angeles. I believe that's what I said.
Well, no, but Riot insists you have to have a team house? I'd say that's a big deal. We got to be very careful about that. Like,
I'm not sure. I'm not going to make a convinced statement on that because I don't remember.
I don't blame you, brother. But here's the thing: if that's true, that in itself is interesting. But I don't think they do. I honestly don't think they do. I think people do it because it's the most cost-effective way to run a League of Legends team.
It's kind of the meta.
Yeah, right? It's what everyone else does, so we do it.
Of the LCS.
Yeah, and I fucking hate it. I honestly fucking hate it, dude. Well, look, right? So let me. This is a more important part of player power.
Can I briefly summarize like what I think are disagreements?
Yeah, fucking do it, dude.
You say that owners have too much control over players. I agree that owners have a lot of control over players, basically on the contract, like during the contract. But they also don't have the freedom that they may have in other sports, mainstream sports, to cut that contract without consequences. So we are somewhat forced to put them on a contract, and they can abuse that to have terms on the contract that, frankly, I think $5,200 a month for a player in that ecosystem on a relegations level team at that point in time, you can talk about like how much effort the players are putting in, how much work they're doing. They obviously deserve to be paid more if they're doing that much work and if they don't have the option not to. But at the end of the day, worth is always determined by revenue. Like it's not effort. I can't go fucking mow some guy's lawn and then mow continuously over the mowed lawn for 6 more hours and demand like $200 more. It doesn't work like that. It's all about the results. You're only paying for the first time you mowed the lawn. And so you can agree, or I can agree with you that owners have a lot of control over players. Where I cannot agree is that they have the freedom to just exercise that and abuse them to the degree that I believe Trindamere is attempting to assert in his post.
No, and look, here's what I would definitely agree. The way Mark Merrill made it sound was that like you were all a bunch of fucking robber barons, which I don't subscribe.
Some of us are.
Yeah, some fucking are, of course, but not all of you, and certainly not everyone at the lower end. I know many well-intending, just naive. Like their only fault is they're naive and they're new, you know, and that's what happens. And unfortunately, like as is
a while ago.
Yeah, as is the process.
It takes now, but
as is the process, you come in, you talk to other owners, they give you some advice, some of it good, some of it representing their self-interest. That's just part of the course. You know, there's no school to go to learn the lay of the esports land.
Yeah.
But here was one of the best parts, in my opinion, of your lengthy statement. And I'll just read it back. I don't want to read it all. You're talking about Flares, though. So there was a bit here. Firstly, Flares is an extremely feast or famine player. If he gets a solo kill, he'll dominate the game. In our first match against TSM, he solo killed...
Don't say it. I don't want to perpetuate that myth.
Right. Well, fuck it. I'm going to perpetuate it. Blame me. Against TSM, he solo killed Dyrus 7 times, and TSM wisely just hung Dyrus out there to die, which they did seem to do that for most of the fucking season. Whatever.
that was a major TSM strategy.
And won the 4v4. But if he dies, well, take a look at the game where we finally allowed him to play the Riven. He was begging to play all season. And I saw his tweets, by the way. I know he denies that he wanted to play Riven all season. I don't think you're a liar. You know, I saw Flares actually during his time in the Renegades house. I remember he did a Quinn pick, and it was just, whatever. Take a look at the game. We finally let him play the Riven. He was begging to play all season. When you have a player like that, he needs a strong jungle support swing that heavily important matchup in your favor. But that brings us to our second problem, Inox. You talk about Inox, but here's the thing. You then go on to talk about how Flares didn't want to pick tanky champs, right? Like he just didn't want to play that way. And I accept that players should be allowed to express themselves, but equally, if a coach tells you to do something, you got to do it. You know, OJ Simpson, when he was an incredible running back, you know, they played him. One coach played him wide receiver for a period of his career and nearly ended his career. You know, would he have killed his wife and all that other heinous shit? You know, had his career ended? Who knows, right? But like literally, that is the career impact. But he listened to his coach. He went wide receiver and he played it. So I think if you're a team player, you have to do what you're told. And Flares clearly, on what you're saying here, didn't want to do it because you say that even in solo queue, he wouldn't play these champions. And in a game, he went top and was laughing about how he was going to clear 2 waves that another member of the team had asked for so they could get the last whisper item. And basically, he was a very difficult and complicated player who only wanted to play the way he did. Now, this is the interesting part. How can you bench him in the middle of a season? Right? Because as you rightly outline here, you have to have a replacement that Riot will approve of. It can't be European because it takes a month to get a visa.
Can't even
yeah. So this is the one area I would say players might be able to exert player power. I think it would be a complete waste on their part to do it this way. But talk me through the Flares thing, because he's denied it. I actually don't think you're telling lies.
I I don't like that because the post was mainly designed to be about Riot. I had to give one example of a team problem that was difficult.
I think it's a solid example. I think it's a solid example. I don't think you should feel bad about it.
People have turned it into a Flares or enemy versus Flares drama war, whatever. What to say about Flares? He's evidently a good player. Like, you can see that from the games where he does well. When he does well, he's better than possibly any other top laner in NA. I'll make that ridiculous hyperbolic statement, but I believe that to be the case. One of the funniest experiences I had during the LCS was a little bit after the qualification. I was watching Meteos' stream one night when I was bored, and he and Sneaky were duo, and they came up against Flares in a solo queue game. And Flares got 38 kills in 31 minutes against their team with Hecarim. And they were just repeatedly running out through the jungle to suicide to Flares, like giggling and laughing with each other, just like, I'm totally going to get him this time, man. It was like really funny just watching Flares in solo queue steamroll this team. But maybe it's that when you're so good at that one style, it's difficult to do anything else. And because obviously when he's playing Nautilus, which in his response post he said he likes Nautilus, I don't know if that's true. I'll treat it as though it is because I agree with most of his posts. You're not having that same impact. Like, you're not just arriving in a team fight, busting down the door like, sup, motherfuckers, and just killing the entire team, which you can with Hecarim. If you're playing Hecarim like Flares, that happened a lot in our Challenger run to get into the LCS. He was just eviscerating teams with these deathball comps. He was
but like maybe he can't make that step up, dude. Because like in Challenger, you can probably play off-meta picks and still get away with it if you're good enough.
Well, Hecarim was on meta at the time, but it's like I said in the post. There was a paragraph near there where I'm like, in the case of a top of LCS star player, like what differentiates the top of LCS star player from the mega carry at the bottom in Flares is that the top of LCS star player, once he knows that the team can't function the way he wants it to, he practices exclusively on what will make the team win. And we didn't get that with Flares. Like, we had like a guy named Dreamweaver who was like an individual coach for us for a while. Most of the money that we did have, part of why we ended up having to pay so late, was looking at better coaching staff. We eventually stumbled upon Young Buck, but probably a bit too late there.
Joey was always going to be a fucking good coach. That guy's a legend.
What was really impressive about him was his outside the game coaching. Like, he would have doing like fucking push-ups at like 8 a.m. and stuff like that. He would have the team all on the same page. I don't know. I wasn't in the house, so maybe it was like they all hated him equally. But that's one of the things that makes a good coach, is when you get the team all on the same page outside the game, and then they get in the game and they play better. They get better practice. And Young Buck was amazing at that. And when you combine that with the game knowledge that he has, because he's an ex-LCS pro, it's like, well, of course he's going to be one of the top coaches in the EU LCS. It's not a surprise. But anyway, we at one point attempted to hire these individual coaches, and one of the coaches, it was his specific job to like stand behind Flares during champ select and make him pick tanks like Maokai and Nautilus. And for
Rob, hang on, dude.
Yeah.
So, like, what? There was you employed a coach, and his job was to stand behind Flares.
His job was. That's an.
I mean, obviously he had other jobs, but that was part of his job.
That's an oversimplification. He was an analyst, and one of his jobs was to make sure that Flares was focused on the correct champions in solo queue. He wasn't literally breathing down his neck during champ select. No, he was.
I get it. I believe it. Again, I'm not saying I don't think you're telling fibs.
And I simply don't think Flair's practiced what we need him to, or what we needed him to, enough.
I don't think he's an LCS caliber player, honestly.
There was another player on the team who just straight up did not play enough solo queue, and we couldn't do anything about that either. I'm talking like 2 games a day, like 3 games a day, if that, sometimes none, other than scrims. And that showed in the LCS mechanically at various times.
Do you think, though, I'd actually rather, let's say, again, because we did do some ideal world theoretics earlier in the conversation.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'd actually like a world where Riot gave you guys the tools to be able to just practice specific things without having to play solo queue. I think solo queue is a cancer on the competitive mindset. I think pros shouldn't have to play solo queue. I think at worst, maybe pickup games with fellow pros. I think there should be like a separate server, a separate queue, a separate entity where you can play pickup games, like we have in Counter-Strike with, the Face It Pro League, and in ESEA we have, Code S and this kind of stuff. Like, literally, I don't think they should ever have to go out and mingle with Joe Public, because Joe Public's fucking terrible. And it's just cancer. It's cancer being the one pro in a game of 9 other non-pros.
Oh, yeah.
They all put this expectation on you that you're going to carry or you're going to be good. If they beat you in lane, they flame you. If you don't carry, you get flamed. It's not worth it. It's not worth the stress just to get your mechanics better. Riot should give you better tools. And here's what's really interesting. I talked to somebody that codes the game. They've worked as a coder over at Riot. Did you know? I'm guessing you did. There is a sandbox mode. It exists. The coders use it.
In what capacity?
So they can press, like, again, I don't know the exact buttons. I've got them written down somewhere. But you could press, like, F12, say, and all the towers would die. Yeah. Or you could press, like, F10 and it would give max gold, and you shit like this. So
yeah, it's ridiculous for people to expect that they would be tuning these champions without a console environment.
Yeah, and they have that console environment. The coders have that console environment.
The idea that they don't like, that's one of the things that Riot came out and commented on so ridiculously in the past. Like, the Riot response follows a cycle, right? There's a problem in the game. People are talking badly about it. They're, like, raising issues with it. In some cases, it turned into a meme, like replays and sandbox mode. And eventually, Riot will come out and say something on it that's just, like, unbelievably stupid and catch tons and tons of flame for it. And then they post a response to the response in which they say something to the effect of, oh, we agree, we made a mistake, we think this is important, here is what we are being cautious to avoid in looking for a solution to this problem. And then they don't end up fixing it. Like, the sandbox mode example was like, oh, we don't want it to be expected when you play Lee Sin in your rank game that you know how to do a ward jump.
Yeah, and here's the thing. No one's talking about even making it publicly available, but if you're a registered LCS player, maybe give them access.
Oh, yeah, no question. That's easy. They can literally just put it on the tournament.
Yeah.
Like,
exactly. No, I don't have access to Tournament Realm, right?
Yeah.
So what's the problem? Joe Public wouldn't have access to Tournament Realm, so why aren't these facilities on Tournament Realm when we know they exist in the game?
There's no valid reason for there not to be a sandbox mode, and it's one of those things. It's like, if you apply it to any other title, you can see how nakedly ridiculous it is. Like, go to CSGO. We've removed the console mode from CSGO because we don't want it to be expected when you play ranked that you know where to throw a smoke. It's like, what? Are you serious? That makes no sense. Players want to be able to practice this. It's not like you force players to practice this. People are still... the notion that if there's not like a sandbox mode, the flame stops.
Yeah, I know. Like,
so
I know, but again, this is what I mean. Ivory Tower shit, right?
Yeah.
This is what happens. Like when they come down, when rioters come down, all right, and they play like, you know, imagine if you were in a game with Riot Tryndamere, right? And it says there, Riot Tryndamere. Like, what am I going to do? Am I going to treat him like a regular player? Am I going to tell him to fucking neck himself first time he fucks up? Of course I'm not going to do that.
Like he's playing Lee Sin, whiffs an easy Q, and someone's like, maybe you should practice in customs. And he's like, I don't understand. We don't have a sandbox mode. This issue should be resolved. I mean, I don't understand it.
No.
I don't get the theory behind it. There's just no valid excuse.
It's just work. It's just work. And the idea of folding in what they let coders use into the tournament realm, I get it's work. But here's the thing.
It's not even much.
Well, yeah, I don't think so. I theorize that it isn't. But equally, I you know, when Riot come out and talk about tech debt and all this shit, what they basically mean is our game is a bunch of shit. We coded it badly. We never expected it to have this many people playing it. And we've been in a perpetual cycle of building on unsteady foundations. I know privately they've attempted to hire coders and other people to work on a project that internally they refer to as League 2. I don't know if that's upgrading League of Legends or whether it's they're going to try and update the client or whatever. But I know they're working
towards League of Legends 2, or it could just like be a map. They could literally put a new map in
but they've always publicly said we'll never do a sequel.
No, I don't believe that.
I don't believe it either. I think you'd be retarded to say that. You know, but
you're banking on this game living indefinitely. No.
Well, they do. They think it will. I mean, that's part of their credo. They've said so. They think this will be the next baseball or something. Again, go out, find the interviews for yourself. No. Google Mark Merrill, Brandon Beck, baseball. You know,
how many times can a new champion released not be redundant? Like, at what point does it just become? Oh, this champion, they've released a champion. Oh, look, the Q is a projectile. Oh, the W is a shield. The E is a jump. Wow. Yeah. Revolutionary.
Here's the thing. It's not even like, do you know what I'd rather? I'd rather they, like, and I think the community would welcome this. I'd rather they came out and said, okay, we're not going to release any more champions, but we're going to intensely balance the game we have.
Yeah.
And what we're going to do is every month or whatever it would be that we release a champion, we're going to release a very, really carefully thought out balance patch. It's going to be every month and it's going to be on the last day of the month. Everybody knows when the patch is coming. And the only exception to this is going to be when we've got big global tournaments played. Mm-hmm. And what we'll do is we'll play those tournaments on whichever iteration of the patch has been in existence for longer. Just do that. It's not hard. We do that in CS. We do that in CS. It's not it's not a big it's like it's that simple to fix everything. Right, back to the statement, because I've already kept you long enough. But I've got to get into this.
I'm not doing shit.
Yeah, well, we all could be doing shit, but so while I accept, right, let's move away from player power and all that nonsense, and now we've talked a little bit about patching. Let's talk about something that's really fucking important, and that is the monetization of League. As an owner, tell me about, like, first of all, your own, I suppose failings. I don't blame you specifically, but you've already talked about how you just couldn't turn. Yeah, you couldn't turn an LCS team into gold. But what do you believe Riot should have done to assist you? What could they have done differently?
For us, it probably would have been as simple as the stipend being higher. I mean, after 3 years, if you're going to have a stipend, it needs to not be a drop in the bucket. Like, if you've decided that the way you're going to run the league is non-monetized with stipends, then the stipend has to be enough to at least significantly bring you closer to even. And of course it's significant. It's like we spent 300 to 330 on LCS, okay? And the stipend was 130. The stipend was 130. Brought it down to 200.
Here's the thing, though. I think the stipend should only be given to challenger teams or newly promoted teams. I think existing teams shouldn't get the stipend, and I think existing teams that want to say, "Hey Riot, give us autonomy," while you're taking Riot money, or "Hey Riot, give us a revenue share." They're giving you a fucking stipend.
I think it makes sense that at the very least, new teams need a noteworthy stipend, but the sponsor schedule is important here because sponsors commit most of their money in the winter, before going into spring split. And if you are the new team in that spring split and you can't pull in significant sponsor interest because of the threat of relegation, then sure, the stipend will cover you for that split, but in the summer, even if you're still in the game, the sponsors aren't there. You still need the stipend to help you at that point in time. So, might be for the first 2 splits. It might take 2 splits to get yourself secure, financially stable in the LCS. But I think I generally agree with that notion because one perspective that I'm often surprised a lot of people don't raise that kind of weakens my position as an owner is that even if you're losing money on it, you have the spot itself, which will sell for a ridiculous amount, way more than it's actually worth. You can, if you're losing money, you can sell the spot as long as you stay in. So there's some degree to which if you're losing money, it's well, you made your bed, sleep in it. But I don't think that's fair to put on a new team before they've had at least their shot at the league and their experience with the league and knowing what it'll take for them to be profitable there. I agree with you. I needed to know more about the finances of the LCS before coming in, but I don't believe that you can have a strong understanding of what you're getting into before the LCS. And I've heard that sentiment echoed by a lot of others. Monty himself said that.
I totally know it.
Video.
Got an echo there. Is that you?
Might be my blue snowball here. I'm on speakers. So.
I blame Sam for all of this shit. I've always blamed Sam. So look, so here's one of the things that I definitely agree with. Everyone that I've talked to who's coming to League of Legends kind of late and trying to start their own team, they've all said the same shit. Fucking hell, man! We thought this was gonna be easy.
Yeah.
We thought, get a team, go play. How much could the overheads be for an esports team? Fuck, we got you a team house, we got you a coach, we got you a chef. This is it, right? This is basic. This is 101. Even some of the teams that came in, like from sports, have said this shit to me. So I totally sympathize, dude. Totally sympathize.
We believed the expenses would be high because you can basically look at the expenses before you're there. We couldn't have predicted $5,200 a month, which is ridiculous on a player, but the others, which were $3,000 to I think $3,750 was our second highest. Those were fairly easy to predict at that point in time. You wouldn't expect to be able to get them for all the minimum. It's the revenue that you can't easily predict.
And that's what I mean. I can sympathize when something ain't what you think it's going to be. What I can't sympathize with is I'm entering into this thing thinking it's going to be profitable, and what ends up happening is I'm just ignorant and didn't realize how it was going to be. That's where my sympathy dries up. That's the point.
Yeah.
At which my sympathy dries up. And I'm not saying this applies to you, but I know there's a bunch of organizations who thought it was going to be a slam dunk.
I think I was reasonably close to the amount of knowledge that you can have on the LCS before participating in it. I think we were fairly up there. We now have all the knowledge we need on the LCS. Whether or not I ever end up back up there, I don't know. But at this point, if I'm in the same position, I know what choices to make at what times. So, and I think a lot of the VC orgs that come in are going to learn before they're fucked over. and will be able to take advantage of that. So,
oh, I know VC orgs that have come in and they bought a league team, and when people went back and they were like, "We need another round of funding," they were like, "Already?" Like that's not even abnormal.
yeah.
I think people are starting to realize that you are chucking money into a pit. It's like I say, I just don't think Mark Merrill realizes that yet. So this is the last thing I want to talk
I
about
don't think
before
Mark Merrill realizes that people realize that yet.
Well,
I think
he definitely does now.
Get away with it. Yeah, he
He
knows.
definitely does now. So look, this is the last thing I want to talk about before I let you go,
Go ahead.
and that is how should League of Legends monetize things better to help out team owners. My theory is this. Tell me if I'm close. For starters, now the LCS, it's still got a lot of viewers, even though for some inexplicable reason they've split it between multiple Twitch channels, almost as if they were trying to deliberately obfuscate how many people were watching. That's ridiculous. Have it in one place, right? They should be selling viewing rights, to that product, and you should be getting that exclusivity. They should pick an online broadcaster. They should even maybe think about picking broadcasters on different platforms. Like cable TV.
Right, sales are number one.
Yeah. Right. So broadcast sales have got to be discussed. You can't keep giving that away for free. On top of that, what you've got to do, you certainly have to at least monetize the league and have a sponsor. And I would certainly say for the LCS, I wouldn't watch an LCS without TSM. I wouldn't watch an LCS without Cloud9. I wouldn't watch an LCS without CLG. I wouldn't watch an LCS without Fnatic. All these big names. Here's what you need to do. You need to bring in some huge endemic sponsors and then do a revenue share. Even if Riot said, fuck it, we'll keep 50%, but we'll split the remaining 50% among the teams. That's something, right? I would also say, if that's going to happen, the stipend has to stop. I think it's unreasonable to demand a stipend.
If there's adequate revenue in the league, the stipend is irrelevant. I don't care about that. If there's actually a way to make money, then maybe like best case or worst case, you give like a tiny stipend, like 20K for a team to run the first month and get themselves into that revenue stream. But that's it. You don't need a full season stipend as long as there's broadcast rights sales and major sponsors for Riot. Because it's basically guaranteed income the same way as a stipend. But
yeah. So talk me through it then. This is the final point I want you to end on. Talk me through how Riot should monetize their league and how that money should be disseminated between all the participants.
This is an issue I haven't actually thought all that much on, surprisingly. But I'm not going to go any numbers because I have no fucking idea. Like I don't
fuck numbers. Fuck numbers. Just give me a theoretical structure as to how it should work.
I think they have Twitch for online broadcasting rights. Mm-hmm. Just because Twitch is the richest when it comes to streaming. YouTube is I believe YouTube is richer than Twitch. I don't know, but
but imagine this then. Imagine a world where Google. Imagine a world where Google say, we want to get one over on Amazon. We're going to buy exclusive LCS rights you can only watch on YouTube on their new launched YouTube game platform.
That would absolutely
good, right?
Fuck Twitch. So they could get a high price from both of them. The first step would be selling to them. The second step, I think, would be looking at ESPN for broadcast rights on major events like MSI, Worlds, obviously. Maybe some... I don't really consider IEMs huge events for whatever. They certainly don't compare to MSI or Worlds. But maybe you could... And I also don't know how IEM is related to broadcast right talks about ESPN or with ESPN. So I don't know there, but possibly for IEMs as well. That'll already give you a substantial amount of coverage. And then there should be I don't think they need to restrict it to big endemic sponsors. I think they should be pursuing way beyond that at this point. If you're giving broadcast rights to a company like ESPN, then the world should know that this is a potential market. The corporate world of America already knows this is a potential market. And if ESPN is getting involved in it, they should be looking at it more closely. You should be able to pull in the Nike, the Coke, again, don't fuck up this time. The fucking Nissan, I was going to say GM, that's probably not happening, just because they're a blanket company. But,
hey, if TSM can pull in companies like Geico, like, fuck, it stands to reason that Riot could, right?
Riot can pull in any company, any org ever has brought in.
Yeah.
More easily. So they should be able to do all of that. And in terms of how that revenue gets split, and I also don't know how... I always have ad block on because I'm a selfish motherfucker. Does the Riot game stream ever run ads? Or are they...
Well, here's the thing. I definitely think it wouldn't even be worth pursuing that. 80% of the esports and gaming audience runs ad block. What's interesting is, Sam, you've discovered this today, didn't you?
What have I discovered?
Well, your dick? No.
Did I?
No, you definitely didn't. Unad blockable ads.
Yeah. YouTube now have unskippable, unad blockable ads. But that could just be like, they could just be winning the arms race for now. There could be an update for ad block tomorrow that says get fucked. So who knows how long that's going to last.
There will be eventually.
Yeah, no doubt, right? But you know, but again, like, I don't think it's impressed. I would never pursue using ads as a fucking means to make money. You know, like, that's why I don't rely on my YouTube channel to make money.
I'm just looking at, like, all their potential revenue streams.
No, and you're right. But a better option would be put all the VODs behind a paywall. That kind of thing. Yeah. You know, on
OGN
Twitch.
did that.
Yeah.
Or I don't know if OGN still does that, but because LCK is run on Riot Games now, but OGN used to be VODs were subscription only.
Yeah, exactly. I remember Blizzard got super upset about that.
And you'd have to pay for good quality too. If you wanted source, you'd have to pay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like, you can watch it 360 for free, but if you want it in source, you know, it's $4.99 a fucking month. Like, it's not a big deal.
You're watching Korean games to sort of learn how they're doing it the best. Yeah. If you're like an aspiring, I want to be better in solo queue, and I think I need to see Korea to know how to do that. It's fucking so dumb. But if you want to do that, they can make you pay for the ability to do that.
Yeah, and you know, I think that's what I mean. I think Riot need to accept right now that monetizing their game is one thing, monetizing the esports side of their game is another thing. The two are inextricably linked because of their model. They've got to stop treating LCS like a free advertising exercise for the game in the hope of hooking those whales. They haven't released the figures. They can
continue letting it be an advertisement vehicle for the game,
yeah,
but they
it can't
get
be
off of it itself.
Exactly. And look, I know, all right, that, you know, the numbers of players are down. The numbers of people engaging with content are down. You go to the League of Legends subreddit and you look at their monthly traffic. It's in a downward trajectory.
It's a video game. I mean,
we are watching League of Legends literally potentially swirl down the toilet. So if you're going to monetize it and change it, now is the time to do it. If you leave it any later, you fucked it. You had the golden goose. And what's funny is, you didn't kill it this time to get the golden eggs out. You just let it die of old age. How fucked up is that?
You let it swim off into the sunset.
Yeah,
there later.
We had some golden eggs. We had some good times. You know. So basically, that just to summarize, you believe broadcasting rights are key.
Broadcasting rights are number one. I mean, as I said earlier, I don't know the particulars on the Turner deal. I don't know how much the numbers are there, how much it's worth, but Riot should be able to easily exceed that. It's a lot of viewers, but
I don't know either, actually. Just to put that out there in case people think I'm being tight-lipped, it's not my department.
Yeah.
So.
I believe Riot can easily exceed that because while CSGO actually sometimes beats LoL on major events, like ESL Cologne CSGO will get so many viewers. Riot just has more consistent viewership week after week after week. Turner League is now competing with that because they've destroyed that monopoly I mentioned on production value. But Riot basically does this 200,000 viewers. This was before they split streams for whatever godforsaken reason. 200,000 viewers every weekend, like 30 weeks a year. It's so much viewership. That puts certain mainstream sports in the dumpster, in terms of viewers, the things they get on Worlds and shit like that. And so their broadcast rights should not go cheap, and they need to know that they shouldn't go cheap, but the fact that they haven't sold yet kind of suggests that they will. I don't know if you saw Reynad's...
I watched it. I watched everything. I'm probably going to get Reynad on at some point. He's a great guy.
I obviously didn't agree with a wide portion of what he said, but one of the points that I absolutely agree with is where he was like, if owners had equity in the LCS, they would have sold to ESPN like 5 years ago.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
And it's like, we would have sold for like $10 million to ESPN. Just a fucking pittance to what they should be getting right now. And so I agree with that sentiment, and I believe Riot has now waited to the peak and needs to stop waiting and take advantage. They're already past the peak. We're going down. You've split streams, player base shrinking. Just do it now.
You know what's crazy? There was a lot of reports about that ESPN deal that nearly happened, right?
Yeah.
They've been in talks, and then I think Riot and ESPN both came out and said, we did talk, but it didn't go ahead. So my understanding about why it didn't go ahead is it's the classic Riot move. They weren't going to give ESPN control of their broadcast.
They were going to insist on running the broadcast their way and ESPN just hosting it?
Yeah.
That's fucking ridiculous. You don't tell ESPN how to run a sports broadcast?
Riot like to think they do. And this is why I think Riot need to evolve, because, you've made the game. Good job. You've created the league. Good job. You've helped some brands grow with you. Good job. All right? Now is the time to sell that product onto people that do things that you don't do and accept that you don't do it. Right? You've
done the hard part. Let yourself get money for it.
When Turner came into esports, they didn't say to me, this is how it is. They said, how should it be? Because they don't know anything about esports.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
You don't necessarily know about monetizing a sports broadcast, Riot, as evidenced by what's happened with LCS. Let ESPN do that for you. Sell those rights. Let them do their thing. You see a lot of companies like this. My understanding is you can't broadcast a Hearthstone tournament unless you go through Blizzard, and they give you those big fake fucking cartoon armchairs and stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, come on, guys. That isn't even a cool look for it. You could have, the next fucking poker on your hands. Just adultify it just a little bit. And they don't do it. They will not do it. So it's
some of the decisions for me are a little bit inexplicable, but I also accept that I don't just have a golden answer for it, because when this stuff, as it pertains to esports, is uncharted waters. There's never been a mainstream sport owned by the... As Monty said, the NFL doesn't fucking own football.
No.
What are you laughing at?
I'm not laughing at you. Sam's being a prick. No, Sam is being... He's just sent me... Sam, tell him what you did.
Innocent with funny picture, and I just can't stop.
He's such an arsehole. I don't know. It's your, intelligent end to the show, and he just...
No.
Don't worry.
We can't even bring this picture up on the screen. I don't know what's wrong with him.
Chachi can see it. We can send it to Chachi.
Yeah, we'll send it to you afterwards, mate. It's unacceptable. Anyway, sorry. Do continue. Football.
The NFL doesn't own football, as Monty said. So when it comes to esports, the fact that the developers of these games absolutely own these games is uncharted waters when it comes to how they deal with broadcasting companies. But what they can't do is just keep on fucking sitting on the boat, which is what they're doing right now. They won't even like go to the edge to fish. Their sailors are fucking starving and they won't do anything about it. And they need to. You can't just wait indefinitely. And so when it comes to how that revenue should be distributed, I don't know. Do they give an equal share to everyone? They probably should. Does that fairly reward teams that have been with them and invested more from the beginning? I don't know. Probably still, because those teams have the big brands. But broadcast rights first, major non-endemics second. Everything else is tertiary to that. Like, do they do ads on their streams? Maybe. Do they do much better in-game marketing? I need to mention this. I put this in the post.
We haven't even talked about, having like logos and skins. I said on another, I can't remember, I think it was another show, me and Sam recorded that maybe hasn't gone out yet, but why isn't there a fucking skin pack for NME?
I mean, there's the fact that exists in Smite run by Hi-Rez, which Riot dwarfs.
And you said you make more money off that per month than you've ever made from League.
We made a one-time payment on icon sales from Riot because the icon becomes unavailable after we're out of the LCS. So they don't have to pay us more than that. They know exactly how many it sold. I believe that the number we got, which I don't remember if I posted it. Did I put it in my post?
You did. It was 3,000. I think it was $3,200.
It's $31.25.
$31.25.
I just wasn't sure if I'd publicized it.
You actually had. Congratulations.
The fact that is such a round number to me suggests that we are not just getting a flat percentage of each icon. And I also find it difficult to believe that our entire split of icon sales would fail to compare to the revenue of a month of Smite skin sales.
What are you saying? Are you saying you get an incredibly low percent? Because what is the what is the advertised percentage?
I don't remember.
I've seen other organizations say it's 20%.
Maybe it is 20%. Yeah. That would make sense. I don't know what the percentage is. I don't know if the percent is fair. If the percent is fair, then Hi-Rez is paying way over what's fair to orgs. And just because
Valve do 50, right?
Yeah, Valve are a ton on stickers. Stickers put Hi-Rez to shame. Hi-Rez puts Riot to shame on in-game marketing. And the fact that World Skins, the team doesn't make any revenue.
Don't even fucking start. That is ridiculous.
That's insane. So I believe it would make sense for each LCS team to have at least, or I'm not going to say at least, only one. We don't want to fucking flood the market. One skin per split. They can pick what champion. They can hack that out as a team. I can host the Hunger Games in the basement of our house and see who gets to decide what the skin is. But one skin per team that they get a much more fair cut of 40-50 on sales from that. It's an extra skin in the game. It's not like it costs Riot more money. It costs them money to make it, but they're going to sell. If it cost them more to make a skin than they actually sold it, they would make skins.
Yeah.
So they have plenty of money on the skin sales to give a significant portion to the team that owns the IP rights. The team doesn't own the IP rights because Riot contracts when they entered the LCS. But I think they simply need to give a bigger share of it. And it's that simple. In-game marketing, probably third after broadcasting rights and non-endemics.
All right. Well, I think that's a good place to end on, like focusing on the solution. There was indeed a statement released today by Reginald. Mark Merrill came out and kind of climbed down a little bit and retracted some of the things he said. Yeah. And of course, Reginald came out and said,
I haven't read yet.
Oh, so Reginald released a statement, a response to the response of his statement. Yeah, because it's getting convoluted right now. And it basically just said, you're going to get a message from all of the team owners about what we want, and let's make this happen. Let's move this forward, right? So,
I'm interested in the progress.
Yeah, it is the thing. I think it's all veiled bullshit. I think the two guys don't like each other. The idea Mark Merrill likes Reginald and Reginald likes Mark Merrill.
Pissed about it, right? Reggie should be pissed about it.
Yeah.
Insinuation that he's not doing enough.
Yeah.
It's nonsense.
It is ridiculous. So I'm looking forward to see what happens next. But certainly, I think it's important that we do focus on the solutions. I'd like Riot to get their act together. Contrary to what people might think, even though I'm persona non grata in League of Legends when it comes to content, I don't necessarily want League of Legends to die. I've never had a problem with it as a game. The community's a little bit young, but they're growing up. I think they're starting to realize the value of things like independence and journalism and not conflict of interest. I think they're growing up, starting to realize, hang on,
You're only really persona non grata to Riot and the mods.
I'll be honest. I've started talking to a lot of Rioters these days. I always had a good relationship with some Rioters. They're not all a bad bunch. And I'll be honest, a lot of the maniacs have started and fanatics have started to leave the company after the share buyout.
One of the Rioters posted on the thread about my post, and I managed to hit him with like a sick Harambe meme. It was so good.
We do like a bit of Harambe, don't we? Don't we, Sam?
As we should.
Not even talking anymore. He's dead. I've
got to unmute both my mics, mate. It's a difficult process.
Really difficult.
I've got a lot of buttons to press.
You're sat there smoking a massive J right now. Yeah, there you go. Mentally ill. Right, go back to sleep. So, look, I think we'll wrap it up there. Thanks a lot for your time. Obviously, I know that you've had lots to say about this particular issue, and I think it's going to get better. I honestly do. I don't think we're necessarily looking at the end of League. I think we're entering a new age of League. What that's going to be is largely dependent on Riot Games. And indeed, look, I'm hearing lots of talk about strike action, that the top teams are threatening to withdraw their labor, if you like, and not play an LCS. That could be interesting. We'll see how that one goes.
I'm obviously not in any of those groups, never have been. I think they should be considering it at this point.
Well, they absolutely are.
4 years. 4 years of the revenue being promised and not showing up is too long.
So we shall see. But look, thanks very much for your time. Are there any final shout-outs or anything you'd like to say? Because apparently you do support some teams. I thought it was all over. You didn't have a CSGO team. You didn't have a League of Legends team. Are there any sponsors? I don't know. No one watches my channel anyway, but feel free to have at it.
Oh, God. Shout-outs to our sponsors, G Fuel.
Yes.
We have others. I don't even...
There you go. You terrible owner.
With that, I'm not like...
That's that sponsor money gone for this month.
You're part of the problem, mate. Mark Merrill was right about you.
Sector 6, our apparel manufacturer. Shout-outs, obviously, to all of our teams. Anyone that we still have. We had a Gears team that we picked up for just MLG Columbus a couple weeks ago. They won the event. They are now Optic. We only picked them up for a single event just because we wanted another win on our resume. Shout-outs to those guys. They were really cool. And shout-outs to the Smite team for just continuing to play at a Worlds Finals winning level. So,
awesome. Great stuff, Robert. And like you say, it's always great to talk to you, mate. So we're going to wrap it up.
For Worlds in January for Smite. I assume you live in Atlanta?
Yeah, I do. And I already talked to the high-res guys about being there for that. So we'll get to... Yeah, I know.
Tennessee money.
I'm all out, motherfucker. So look, Sam, I think we should wrap up the show. Do you have anything to add? You've been awful quiet.
Rest in peace, Harambe.
Excellent. There you go. So thanks a lot for tuning in. See you on the next video.